Our first speaker, Amir, is probably known to most of you, but he is the University of Newcastle's conservator. He works on the topics of conservation, Middle Eastern studies and history, and prior to 2008 he worked on international projects in the preservation of World Heritage Sites. His works have been presented and published in the prestigious international forums in Europe and New Zealand. Well, we're very lucky to have you here, Amir. It's great to hear that background, so we look forward to hearing it. Thank you very much.
In the course of today's workshop, you hear different presentations from the technical perspectives or case studies that have been done by our distinguished colleagues. But the topic that I thought would be useful to talk about generally is, why do we care? What is this heritage? And why is that matter? Why this past matters? Or matters of the past matter? So this was a question that I had since I was a first-year student of conservation 20 years ago. I was always thinking that, in this time of hardships, every time governments, no matter where they are, talk about the hard financial situation, other priorities and everything, and not so much surprisingly, heritage always comes the last. And if they want to cut anything, first they cut from the conservation project or archaeological project, or who cares from their perspective. So we had the same situation back at home, and apparently from my accent you realize that I hadn't came from Switzerland or any country like that. I'm coming from a region that is famous for its despots, wars, and things like that. So the perspective that I'm delivering here is the experience that I have gained through the time of working with this sort of situation. And then when I was fortunate to come to Australia, I had a different experience. I thought that there are several things that are shared in the matter of heritage preservation. The first thing that is shared in the matter of heritage preservation is, especially within the advocates and heritage preservation group, is sort of ambiguity that what is heritage that we are advocating for. We know we lost something, we know that something matters for us, but generally in heritage preservation we don't have the language to go in dialogue with decision makers. Okay? The case of famous cases in Newcastle, like that story of trees in near the library, the gallery, Lemon Street. Is a famous, I think, it's a good example of both sides doing the not to do's, because both sides weren't thinking of heritage as it should be, as it is appropriate. So first of all, I give you a little explanation of why the heritage matters in next few minutes, and then I go to the concept of Kulturpolitiks, that I like the term, but cultural policies, and I say why I use the Kulturpolitik. And then if I have enough time, I give one example of successful heritage policies that have been done by the cooperation between people, volunteers, and groups like that, and the government at a later stage. I think most of you, so first of all, I give some explanation of why is that matter. I think most of you know one way or another about Benedict Anderson and the concept of imagined societies or imagined communities. If you follow that idea, every community more than two people, every relationship with more than two people, is an imagined relation. Because we have to think of some relationship out of intimate needs to share the bonds with other members. It's rough the explanation, but you find the reason that why I raise this definition to go further. So we have to imagine some past, some relationships, some shared values, and those sort of things. When we want to become a polity named country, this matter becomes much more important, because as a nation, as a country in the modern world, we need to share things, okay? To feel belonging to some place, to feel some sense of collectiveness that we don't share with some other countries, okay? What makes this, so we have stories of ourselves, narrations of ourselves, history is taught in the school, and we know something, okay, about who we are as whoever, from whatever country that we are. But the things that make this thing tangible, make this thing real, because all of this is our mental construct, is our imagination, that that once upon a time there was this past and this archetype, we did this, we did that. Most of that we don't have any direct connection with them, because Cyrus the Great, for example, used to live in 2,000 years ago, Alexander the Great, someone, and every single person in any country who serves as an archetype lived years ago, generally in mythological time, generally wrapped with lots of stories, not facts. Not facts necessarily. What makes this feeling and relationship tangible are the heritage, monuments, books, rock arts, and most importantly, rock arts and monuments, because they last. We see them every time we pass Persepolis. You remember something. Every time you pass Wollombai, you remember something. You feel something that is there. The work of ancestors, the work of people who lived before us, and we feel relationship with them. So we need heritage, but because this is an imagined and interpretive material, we do not necessarily share it. However, we live in one country, we do not necessarily share it with other parties. We share some things, but we do not necessarily share everything. So, in case of extremes, you may have state government or insurgent group that doesn't share the values that we share, doesn't think in different ways. You see, if it is ISIS, they just don't like it, they destroy it. If it is a country or government or a state that is very much concerned with budget, with other matters like defense or things like that, they cut the budgets from the heritage. They don't care about it, because generally governments have limited scope, no matter where they are. They are coming from short period, or they are coming with tunnel vision, depending where they are. So if you are in Middle East, government comes and lasts forever, but they have tunnel vision. If you are in democracies or in West, government is coming for 4 years, 8 years maximum, and they want to do things and make a good legacy of themselves and go. So heritage is a long-term project. Most of the time doesn't fit, because they want to create jobs, they want to do something to say that, look, we did this. And because of this, most of the time, we as heritage advocates, practitioners, whatever we call ourselves, feel tension and struggle with wherever we are. The good thing, however, about the democracies is the process. See, in countries that there is no democracy, despot doesn't like the heritage, so God help you to go negotiate with them. But in democracies, everything can be negotiated politically. And my major point here is that heritage, like any other thing, is a political phenomenon. It's something that needs to be regarded, advocated, and taken care of technically and politically. Okay? So we negotiate, we talk. We can't expect a government or a state, wherever in the world, doesn't matter, because anytime any state who comes to power represents a group's idea, one or two groups' idea, doesn't necessarily support the rest of the people's. So we can't expect governments or states plan in favor of heritage, not that they don't like it necessarily, but just it's not their priority. But the good thing about democracy is that then we can go through the political process, negotiate for what we think as an important thing. Here comes the idea of Kulturpolitiks, or cultural planning, or cultural policies. Generally, Kulturpolitik, cultural policies is something that is done by the state. You think, or we generally think of that this is the state that plans. Budget for this, budget for that, do this, do that. And it's correct. But in our modern time, we can think of it is not only a state that has the power, especially in democracies. It is not only the state that has the power, it is not only a state that can plan. People also, in different levels, can plan things and negotiate things and with the right language. Use the language, use the legal terms, use the legal process or political process to pursue these aims. The images that you see here are the examples of the sites that were politically important, or the manner of negotiations, not all of them successful, for better preservation system. So, with saying this, now we have a perception of why heritage does matter, and a perception that what is the cultural policy in general. As I said, we need to be conscious that we have to expect that most of the time we get frustrated when we talk with state or government in any country about the value of heritage, and because we don't share the same language. It is our responsibility that take the language. Okay? It is our responsibility that instead of talking, it matters for me because it's important, and not having the good technical terminology, that why is that important, take the technical language and go for negotiation with these planning bodies. And of course, the digital era is helping a lot, because most of the things that we weren't able to do before, now we are able. I remember when I was working in one of these sites, I have spent my whole master's program to calculate the rates of erosion. And then after I came here years later, I was watching a digitizing camera system that does it in 2 minutes. Okay? So we can change how in just a decade things has changed. It was in the moment that I saw that program, I felt so upset because I just thinking, I've wasted my time writing formulas and mathematical calculation to say, this building will last, or this engraving will last 100 years or 200 years maximum. Now you can estimate that with 2 scans in 2 years, and that's it. So this is the ability that digital technology has brought for us. In the next presentations, you see examples of how this is helping on the grassroots level, on the volunteer level, not on the expert level. So people can actually do things that we're not able to do before. So before finishing my talk, I would like to see, when I wanted to present, I wanted to talk about the art destruction and how bad it is and what are the political ideas. But then I thought, it's a morning, it's Friday, so I should talk about something more interesting and more hope-giving, something positive. And it is the attitude that we have to take in heritage preservation, because without that, we lose the ground for those who are absolutely poorer than us. And I decided to give a success story. One of the success stories, one of the major arguments that everywhere is made against heritage is economy. Okay? It's against the development. You have heard it, all of you, I bet you have heard that, we want to develop this city and this wings doesn't make any positive growth. Well, it's not true. But we have to know why it's not true. Because examples that have done by other people, most of countries poorer than Australia, less industrial than Australia, they've done things, and it actually helped the economical growth. It actually helped creating jobs. It actually helped people feel better. And one of the good examples of that is a project that have been done in the last decade in Slovakia. So Slovakia, I don't think anybody thinks that Slovakia is richer than Australia. So it's a very Eastern European, not that much wealthy country. Okay? So in Slovakia, in the last decade, a group of people have raised an interest about the collection of castles, historical castles that were in danger. So NGOs formed. And these NGOs started to negotiate through different ministries in Slovakia for the preservation of these collections. And they managed to get the interest of some departmental agencies. Okay? And it is very important. You need to be conscious and interested about one part that opens the door. So you go to talk with them, and then you open the way for further discussions. They have planned the preservation program based on employing unemployed and volunteers. Okay? The idea, so in a modern heritage preservation mindset, we shouldn't be rigid. We shouldn't think that, we need to keep this and that's a government's idea. No, it's a political thing. And because it's a political thing, we need to, in politics, what we do is compromise, gain something, give something, give credit to those who don't have the credit, and that sort of. So we do the same. They did the same thing here. they managed to argue that with this project, they're going to employ unemployed people. And these unemployed people, during the process of this preservation, will be working and will get training based on their attitude and based on their attendance for being ready to get into the job market. So heritage is potentially very rich ground, okay, for gaining the skills like brick laying or stone masonry or everything in that. They did that thing in the case of Slovakia. They in the beginning they just took all the unemployed people who were interested and to volunteer in this project. They monitored them based on the management of their NGO heads, not governmental or anything like that. So each group were managed by its head of the group. And then based on their attitude, they got into the different training schemes. And in Slovakia, they managed to get funding of 3 million euros from the European Union after they started this thing, and they managed, with that funding, they managed to pay a decent salary to their volunteers later. They employed, in the whole process, they employed 800 people, and most importantly, they trained 800 people in different skills, so that they were ready to go to job later. However, this project extended later because everybody wants success, and when the success is, believe me, everybody comes and wants to share it with you. Okay, and we had the same experience. I mean, in smaller case here, that after we succeeded a few steps with the project that we started years ago, everybody wanted to share it. So would you like this? Would you like that? And it's good, and we have to be welcoming in that case. So in Slovakia, they managed to preserve their castles. They managed to restore most of their endangered castles by the help of their volunteers. And they managed to grow economically the communities that generally were among the most poor and the less skilled. Okay? So I think with having that, I think I have to finish. So with this mentality and with this thing, I will draw your attention to the rest of the presentation to see what we can do as heritage activists and practitioners, and to come up with ideas that maybe we can do something substantial here in Newcastle, maybe as an example to serve the nation. Why not? Huh? Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Amir. It's a great note to finish on, and it's a great note to start on, because the idea of heritage and the importance of it. There are many people in this room who have interest in different types of heritage. I started my career in the classics department under Godfrey Tanner, and Godfrey Tanner was so committed to heritage and to the past and the tradition. Bernadette, Suzanne, they all had different. I could go around everybody in this room. I think the idea, I loved your thoughts on the imagined relationship. And I know that one of the great things for me was actually to go and visit the places, which we've all done, Greece and Rome and so forth, but also to have the literature, and to be able to translate, to be able to go into the language of the Latin and the Greek, and essentially develop that imagined relationship and that shared relationship over a long time, so that eventually it all becomes very much alive, and you spend your days trying to convince the heretics and infidels that it is important that we actually have this, and they're usually high up in positions in the university, the higher up they get, the more opposed they are to these sort of things. But you've presented a good case for it. I think the thing that really I look for, having had that background, is if I go and examine a stone tool collection that's been put together by a friend of mine over the last 20 years on Aboriginal stone axes and so forth, or if I see some rock art, it's like I cry out for more information, more language, and more interaction from somebody who can tell the story, so that I can imagine a relationship. And that's where I think that's the job.
Yep.
That's what you're talking about. You can talk about the monuments that we find in those ancient worlds. We're seeing these monuments and we're trying to give life to them. So I don't really want to comment on that at all.
Yeah, see, I was in haste to just finish my talk on time. But one of the most important things is that heritage is very, very dynamic concept. And everything that serves the value for every community can be considered as a heritage. So documents, literature. In fact, documents, texts, and literature are one of the most important because you get the language. With the language, you get the sense of what's going on. One of the things that we would like to draw the attention here is that with these things, we feel together. Okay? Believe it or not, coming from parents who were not born in Australia and I'm a migrant, through Indigenous sides, I feel connected to this country. Okay? And my lovely friends, of course, but with heritage perspective. So, if we take away this thing, if anyone takes away this thing from a nation, the alternative is not so much good. So I'm at the moment waiting for one of my articles to be finalized. I argue about the security matters that are related to the heritage or not having the shared memory and heritage. So you have a guy in Melbourne, Sydney, angry, not feeling as the rest of the community. Most of the time when you talk with them, they don't share the history. They don't link themselves through the history and through the monuments to the rest of the people. Those who create the alternative history are not always good people. And that makes problem. Because they can give them something that is tangible. They feel it through the text. They feel it through the act. They feel it through the monument that is somewhere in the world. So they can look at it, say, yes, God was there, the truth was there, these people are right, but these people don't have any story. Okay? So yes, it is very much important. And the high up people need to be more and more concerned about it. Because if they don't know the languages, I'm back to your thing, they have a dull thing, something that doesn't make any sense.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It does remind me of one of the first things that Godfrey Tanner introduced me to was the idea of damnatio memoriae in relation to the Emperor Domitian and how successive emperors could wipe out the memory of the previous emperor simply by removing the name, removing the statue, and removing anything from literature. And I think in many ways, and I was thinking about this as I came across this morning, damnatio memoriae is alive and well in our world. So we actually have to, I think you're championing the idea of the heritage. It's a great thing. So are there any other questions while we've got them? We're very fortunate to have you here.
There may be just one, if I may. Just going through the evolutionary process of things that develop over the time. You had a picture of what we call Wyoming up there on the film earlier. Living out of break when we were only kids, I I can well remember having to walk out there and sneak on and just stand there at all and don't really understand what it meant. And then years later, you had to go and get permission off Mr. Smith to go on there and have a look. And then years later, she wanted to charge you $5 a carload to get on there and have a look. And now in recent years, the National Parks has taken it over, and you don't have to get permission to go on there. So over the decades, access to it has changed. But at the end of the day, when you read through some of the earlier reports of the original settlers, the Clarks, the Ethers, the Calpines, in no uncertain terms, now these are written in the 1850s, 60s period, the original people that lived there then didn't know anything about it. They didn't even know what it meant. They had no idea who done it. But now, somewhere in the system between the 1850s now, we suppose these people come out of, other people would come out of the woodwork and say, well, this is what it means. Who's right and who's wrong?
I mentioned the thing that heritage is a dynamic concept. Every group, see, when you have a monument, there are different groups and different stakeholders who are interested for different reasons, generally political and economic, in depth, to the side, okay? And everyone has a claim. Not necessarily, as you gave the example, fit with the other. It doesn't really, as long as it is considered as a heritage place, it doesn't really matter that who is right, who is wrong, because the guy who knows, you have experienced that in your childhood. That is your heritage, no matter what it meant. So through the explanation that you yourself gave, you mentioned that, yeah, I was walking there, so you had a childhood there, you had the memories there, and these memories make sense for you no matter what that sign meant. Of course, somebody else comes and gives another explanation of that. And in the management and in the advocacy of the heritage, the trend, the modern perspective is that we actually consider all of that, and we consider the sharing of different ideas on one side, okay, enriches the place, enriches the importance of the place. So we are not that much, I mean, it's an anthropologist's job, an archaeologist's job, and linguist. Unfortunately, in case of Australia, maybe the linguistic job be a little bit more difficult because of the things that I hear and experience regarding the languages. But this is those people who actually debunked what it meant and what it's supposed to mean. But this is next level of the job. Our job as heritage practitioners is that, yes, this is recognized as a heritage place. Two, the more the merrier, better. Let's everybody consider this site as a heritage site. And I'll give you an example. This is not the case in case of just Australia. In the Middle East, and I worked in the same thing, but in the Middle East, you can find a place that used to be a pagan temple, then turned to be Jewish temple or Zoroastrian temple, then turned to be a church, then turned to be a mosque, and you can see the different levels of heritage going on. So there are two options for Middle Easterns, and unfortunately they took the second that I said. The first one was to share it and say, okay, so this site is holy or important for all of us. No matter who says right, we share the same place. So let's progress on it. The other one is that who is right, who is wrong. And that I don't need to explain that what happens when they think like that. So they go to the brutest way to to claim the place. Okay, and this is not helping. So I would just say that the more the merrier. Just appreciate the heritage.
Can I just add to that, Amir? In the specific case of Wyoming, there is some very good ethnographic evidence from Matthews in the very early 1800s of the connection of the local people with the place. And I think we have to bear in mind too, and it's something that's been in the media recently, and it's something that's not talked about and it's not taught in our schools yet. But we live in a place where Indigenous culture was, specifically targeted to be broken, and it was specifically politically minimised for the longest time, and especially from the time that people white people entered Australia quite late in the piece. So I think it's there's a rich context to all of that stuff as well, and there are lots of different perspectives, as you said, involved in each kind of individual heritage place.
Thank you. Any more questions?
You mentioned digitisation, and you've mentioned the importance of the real, the fabric, the physical presence. What's your perspective on the increasing interest in virtual reality, the digitisation of sites? Yes, it allows for a much wider sharing, but at the same time there is a potential risk that the virtual then becomes more valued than the real, or that the virtual then becomes the substitute for the real. We don't have to conserve the real because we have the virtual.
My idea is that that argument that is made is like we accept a copy of your passport instead of yourself. See, yes, in many cases you send the copies of your photo, but someone should be there to make sense of that photo. So I appreciate digitalization. I think it's very positive and should be considered as very, very good opportunity for us in preservation of the heritage. But we shouldn't mix up lazy approach with smart approach. I think sometimes it's lazy and people choose to be the easiest way, and not always the easiest way is the best way.
Thank you. Any more questions? Amir, thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. Johnny actually pointed out to me at the beginning that he did have some gifts for speakers. On the one hand, I can present them with a little box of chocolates. On the other hand, I can present them with a little item that protects them from evil. You might need it after some of the challenges that you've